as the story goes, we used to pick on him while he was a junior.
Like a bunch of bullies.
Like a
bunch of high school bullies.
Like a bunch of bullies. We picked on him. It was tough love. Tough love.
We called it the School of Hard Knocks.
And it only lasted about a year and a half until he was stronger than everyone. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Coaches on Couches.
Bing Slouches.
Today on the couch, we have Coach Jonny Brown, something we've been wanting to do for a long time, sit down with him and kind of take a deep dive. We'll be talking about his role with us, his coaching career, his professional career, all that good stuff. But first, I'm Coach Dale Sanford.
I am Coach Bryant Funston. We are the co-founders of BPC Performance Coaching, where we specialize in helping time-crunched athletes optimize their busy schedules so they can maximize their athletic performance. You can find out more about BPC by going to buildpeakcompete.com, checking us out on Facebook and YouTube at Build Peak Compete, all up on that Instagram at BPC Performance, and hit us up on any of your podcasts via Spotify, iTunes. Where are all the other ones at?
All the good ones.
Only
the good ones. Yeah, so we have known Jonny for a long time. As the story goes, we used to pick on him while he was a junior.
Like a bunch of bullies.
Like a
bunch of high school bullies.
Like a bunch of bullies. We picked on him. It was tough love. Tough love.
We called it the School of Hard Knocks.
And it only lasted about a year and a half until he was stronger than everyone.
We kept hoping he'd move away sooner. We're like, come on. Someone pick him up. Let's get him out of here.
But yeah, so we've, it's kind of a full circle moment for us, having known him since he was, 13 years old. So, so Jonny has come on as a coach with us, which we're super excited about because he brings a whole lot of experience, not only just in training at a high level, but race experience, experience going through the junior development route, which is a big deal. Just tons and tons of good experience. So, Jonny, kind of give us just kind of a quick rundown of your life as a cyclist from the start to right now.
Yeah, a quick little rundown is I've known these guys now for probably 10, 11 years. So I started racing when I was 10, kind of built up through the junior ranks, couple time junior national champion, went to the world championships as a junior, and then from there moved on to a professional U23 team, and then slowly been building on my professional rank since then.
So what was your, kind of going through the junior ranks, you were on hot tubes. What was kind of the route there from being on hot tubes, and then what teams were you on after that?
After hot tubes, I joined a U23 team called Hagens Berman Action. So it's the premier U23 team in the world. Axel Merckx, Eddie Merckx' son, runs that team. And a lot of riders have gone through the squad, Grand Tour stage winners, World Tour riders. Right now, out of all U23 teams, they have the highest amount of riders in the World Tour. So I joined them and I did my whole U23 career with them. So I did 4 years. And then after that, kind of as I was exiting is when the whole thing with COVID started happening. So things kind of didn't take the turn I was hoping. And then I joined an Irish Continental team called Evo Pro. And I was with them for 2 years. And now going into this year for 2022, I'm going to be just racing solely in the U.S. now for a team called Miami Blazers.
Yeah, that's something we're going to want to ask more about and find out more about what you're doing with the Miami Blazers. So I know there was people that had questions on that. So yeah, here in a little bit, towards the end of this, after we talk more about your coaching stuff, we want to dive into to this year, this season, what you're excited about. But let's kind of dive into the coaching side of things. Tell us a little bit about your coaching history. Obviously, you just came on board with us. Past couple months? Yep. You're going to be a huge asset for us, but just kind of talk about some of the coaching you've done. I know you've worked with juniors, but you've also worked with the time crunch folks that we're used to working with a lot. So just dive into that a little bit for us.
Yeah, I've kind of always loved the coaching aspect, especially since I was a premier junior. I kind of knew a bit of what it takes if that's the goal, and even just to be the best junior you can. So a couple of years ago, I decided to start helping juniors and start coaching them, and that's kind of how it first started with my coaching. Is I was helping juniors out, and I loved working with them. And then as time progressed, I also started getting some other clients, like you said, the time crunch people. But ultimately, I still do love working with younger kids and helping them achieve their goals.
Yeah, it's kind of that's without the junior development routes, the American cycling, like professional cycling, kind of starts to die off. So it's extremely, important work in my opinion, to keep kids progressing, and then just getting more kids in the sport. I mean, without the constant flow of kids into the sport, there's going to be no juniors, going to be no professionals that are prepared to race at the highest level.
Well, I think that's one thing you and I are like super excited about with having Jonny on board with us, is he's going to bring this unique perspective, having raced from 10 years old till now, but also having worked with, your high level, elite level coaches. So, he's coming from programs, very established, well-known, long-time coaches and programs. And for any junior that's wanting to gets interested in cycling, shows they have some potential, the insight that Jonny is going to be able to have, not only from his own experience, but also pulling from the experience of those who make a living out of developing juniors, is going to be great. So I think that's something that we're excited about seeing grow, and I know, Jonny, that you're excited about that also.
Jonny, has there been anything thus far in the coaching side of things that you maybe were a little surprised about, or was maybe harder than you thought?
Surprised. Keeping people motivated.
Pop quiz, hot shot.
Yeah.
Keeping people consistent and motivated. Because I'm a very motivated person. So that, and I definitely am one that if I have my goal, I'm definitely going to do everything in my power to achieve that goal. So at first, like getting into the coaching thing, especially when I'm working with juniors and they have this goal of, I want to do this, and then all of a sudden they don't ride their bike for like a week. And you're like, well, I thought you had this goal of doing this, like, what are we doing type thing. So that was definitely, or it still is, something that's hard for me to figure out sometimes. The best way to motivate people, to keep them on track to reach what they want to reach.
Yeah, for sure. That is, that's not just juniors. That's life in general. And I think you coming from a background where that was your life, your job, your, everything, putting it into perspective where you add in, well, now you have a kid and you have other work as well. So, you're kind of getting it now, whereas, you kind of grew up having all the freedom and time to put everything towards your goals, and now having to factor in the other aspects of life. You kind of realize where some of the challenges and pinch points come in. But yeah, that's an ongoing thing for us too, is just learning how to keep each person motivated, because not everybody is motivated by the same things.
That's a massive part. Coach Jonny and I, we're part of the way we're setting things up. Johnny's helping me. He's going to be he's coaching his own folks. But the main thing, he's obviously going to be working on the cycling side of things. And he and I have been having, 2 time per week calls. And when we're going through folks, a big part of it is, and it's like we talk about on the podcast all the time, like consistency. How do you keep someone consistent when there is all the extra life stuff going on? Because it's that one workout that maybe you hit some of versus skipping completely that can make a big difference in whether or not you achieve that long-term goal or not. And, so that's always an area of focus. It's like a perfect program can be written out, but that if it's not something a person can actually hit based on their life schedule, it's not the perfect program. So kind of making those tweaks, having the extra conversations. So the coaching is so much more than just writing a plan. It's all the extra stuff, taking into account recovery, sleep, nutrition, life stress, family stuff, schedules changing, like all of that stuff. I'd be interested to hear, Jonny, like how has, and maybe it hasn't, but ever since you've had a kid, you're married now, have had a kid, that's all happened, in the last couple years. Has stuff changed? Has your perspective changed? Or have you become more motivated after that, from a cycling standpoint? Because you're still very much, I know you have big goals from the cycling world. So kind of jump into that for us.
Yeah. I would definitely say, like, prior to all this, it was pretty easy for me to just hit the workout. What I had in for the week, for the next 2 weeks, was kind of no big deal. I can get that done, no problem. So I went and talked to my coach and over a lot. Like I'd comment on Training Peaks and he would comment back, and all that stuff. But like one-on-one conversation, like I need to switch this or do this, didn't happen that much. But over the last year and a half, 2 years, I've definitely had a lot of rearranging, a lot of communication with my coach of just life happening sometimes, and just having to rearrange, because as you were just saying, you can build out that perfect schedule, what you think is perfect, but things happen in life that it needs to get changed, and that is where it is key to having a good coach that is communicative, and you guys have a good relationship of getting things changed and then optimizing the best you can.
Yeah, there's the perfect program is the one that you can get done. That's pretty much it. So
yeah, the one that you get done that keeps you motivated, right? Yeah. And I guess motivation's kind of we should dive into that someday. Like, if you're relying on motivation to get you through every week and every workout, and you're just going to wake up motivated, that's not going to happen.
No,
I mean,
no.
At some point in time, you have to realize that, there's going to be days that suck, that you don't want to do something, and you got to do it. And that's where you think about your long-term goal. It sort of reminded me, hey, Jonny, did you ever see that YouTube video where it's like the director sportif that's in like
oh yeah
Belgium or something? It's like this cold, rainy, miserable day,
and he's yelling at the
junior
kid.
Comes back to the car and is complaining about being cold, and the car director is like, the sport sucks. Yeah. Get back up there and ride harder. Do you ever have moments like that?
I've plenty. Yeah, actually, like literally like 5 days ago when it was like 40 degrees and raining.
Exactly right.
Yeah, there's a whole podcast on motivation here, brewing.
Discipline versus motivation versus that's where having the goal is so key, right? Like, and part of the big steps we have when we're bringing on a new athlete is, what are your goals? What are your short term? What are your intermediate? And what's your long term goal? And, you know, us as coaches, we're looking at, okay, what we do over the next 3 months, we want to help you achieve that short-term goal. But we also want to be looking down the road. Like, our plan is not for you to achieve a goal in 3 months and bag the sport and be out of here.
Yeah.
Like, we want to think about, okay, where are you going to be long-term, and how are we going to adjust? What may be best short-term may not be best long-term. And so adjusting your program, and it may mean pumping the brakes a little bit more. You know, if you're new to the sport, you have a goal race in 3 months, but we want you in 2 years to be progressing, staying healthy, continuing to improve. We're going to be more conservative with your program than what you might get on a pre-built 12-week. I'm going to do the advanced plan because I want to be as fit as I can be. We're going to be more conservative with that. So kind of thinking about you where you're at now, but also long-term is hugely important.
I just had a conversation yesterday and bled into this morning. One of our athletes who isn't necessarily a racer or doesn't race at all, and mainly it was using cycling as a weight loss, way to weight loss, and he set this big goal and was like locked into it and achieved it. And I mean, literally dropped like 50 pounds over, several months. And then it's like he got there, he's looking great, feeling great, riding really strong, but now it's like, well, what the heck do we do now? Mm-hmm. Like we reached this big, crazy goal. I'm feeling good, but I don't know what to do now, and then it's, you even kind of lose focus at that point, and maybe your routines change. Like you get out of a routine that you were in, and, for weight wise, maybe the weight starts sneaking back on. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of people just have to have that goal, and it can't be like the little stuff. It has to be like a big epic thing to motivate them to do the work day after day.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So
Jonny, what's that big exciting goal that you've got?
Well, I was going to jump back onto that. No matter what, whether you're professional or something as losing weight, it goes for everyone, like professional athletes, and the same thing. Like once you achieve that goal, it's hard for everybody to then sit down and refocus and then figure out, like, what is my next goal now? Like, I achieved this big, great thing that I wanted. Mm-hmm. What am I going for now? Because then no matter where you're at in your in this journey, it's hard for everybody to sit down and kind of find that focus again. And it's easy to kind of just relax the shoulders, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, 6 months, a year down the road, you're like, what was I kind of doing type thing.
Yeah, for sure.
It goes for everybody. So once you achieve those goals, it's almost like give yourself a week maybe to be like, oh, it's week, 2 weeks, like I achieved that, great. But now I need to sit down and really figure out what's my next, if that's what drives you, what's my next goal? Because it's going to be easy to lose focus.
For sure. So kind of just to change gears a little bit, what, as far as the coaching side of things, what like excites you the most about just jumping in and becoming a coach and trying to kind of make that more of a long-term goal for you, is, to transition eventually from a professional athlete to a coach?
Kind of, literally what we were just talking about, helping people achieve the goals that they have, whether that's winning, say, state champs Cat 4 road race, or losing 50 pounds. I definitely get a lot of joy out of helping people achieve the goals that they want and keeping them on track.
Yeah, that's a huge part of coaching. If you don't like helping people, you might as well just not even try. That's, it's one of those things where they're successes and their joys become your successes and your joys. And then at the same time, the opposite goes, the opposite is true as well. When a goal goes sideways or, you know, something comes in, or in a lot of these people, you get to know them so well that, you know, even some of their personal things that they share with you, you know, you kind of hold that on your shoulders a little bit while you're making their program and trying to keep everything in their life balanced. So yeah, if you don't enjoy helping people, coaching, not for you.
Yeah. No, I think one of the other exciting things is there are so many goals, but you could take two people with the exact same goal, but they may have totally different life schedules. And, and that's a different program. They may have totally different motivation levels, and that's a different program. They may be physiologically totally different. You know, one may handle the high-end stuff a lot better, and the other likes the longer, steadier stuff. And there is no, you can read research study after research study, but at the end of the day, there is a lot of I guess the science side, but then also accounting for all of those other variables. What happens in a controlled environment is not necessarily anywhere close to what happens over the course of an 8-month training program with an athlete who's got 3 kids, who has a stressful job, who, you know, has to travel, who, like, there's just so many external factors. And as a coach, trying to, like, put that puzzle together to help them not only improve as an athlete, but also to make sure that their athletic goals are making them better in all the other areas of their life versus providing another stress point for them, is something that I find super interesting. And it keeps each week interesting as a result.
Yeah, for sure. We have had the conversation multiple times about if we could figure out how to assign a TSS score to life stresses, like, that would be amazing, because that would help, you know, looking at the metrics inside Training Peaks and stuff like that, when you're watching the data change and the trends happen, you know, if you could just factor in those things, like, it would be so much easier. But
yeah, like Whoop is, you know, Whoop and Aura and all those new tracking devices are trying, you know, they're trying to do that.
Yeah.
But even different people, stress impacts them.
They handle it differently,
right?
Yeah.
So there's like, your body may not be showing the results. You may not be having heart rate values that are changing or sleep cycles that are different, but it could be impacting you mentally during your workouts, and so you're not getting nearly as much out of it. So there's just so much to that performance puzzle that it keeps things interesting and keeps coaches, us as coaches, growing.
For sure. So should we change hands to what people are probably jumped on the podcast to actually hear?
Yeah, we should probably do that eventually.
Okay. All right. So
in part 2, tomorrow, we're coming at you.
yeah, psych.
Just kidding.
Yeah. So we obviously, Jonny is the youngest ever professional national champion, United States national champion, couple of junior national championships under his belt, has raced against the best in the world, all over the world. So has a pretty
tour Utah, tour California, like some of these big events.
Yeah.
Jonny was actually telling me how wrecked he was. Was it after Tour California that you were wrecked?
Probably the hardest day I've ever had on a bike.
Yeah, so we want to just jump in, to your professional career a bit and get some insights. I think people are real interested to kind of hear, straight from the horse's mouth on how, just kind of ideas into the professional cycling life, and then, what you're up to, coming up. So like I'll just jump into a question from the socials here.
From the socials, yeah.
Yeah. What is your worst race experience, or moment, or conditions, or I don't know if we already alluded to that, but
we talked about Tom Demolins yesterday, or on the last podcast, when he was in the Giro and had a bowel issue. Have you had any of those, Johnny?
I have not had that. See, this is a hard one because he asked like 3 different things, so I kind of have one for like every
let's go
one.
experience.
Worst experience.
Worst experience.
Well, it'd probably be last year in 21. We did a race called Scheldeprijs. Pretty much it's a world tour race. We were the only continental team there. So it's definitely, it's a very windy spring race. It's known for crosswinds and just being horrible. In Quick Step, we literally started, and within 5 kilometers into the race, you turn into the crosswind, and Quick Step hit it already, of course. And we were in.
They did what they do, huh?
Yeah, we were in a million different pieces. But then, anyways, the team did not do great. We were in the 3rd group, and we finished on like, it was 3 circuits, and we did like 1 circuit, and then the final 2 groups, which was only like 40 people still racing, they keep racing, and then they pulled all the rest. So we pretty much did the whole race. But then our team, who was, we'll call them very old school, decided since we were so bad, we needed to ride home back to where we were staying. So we had already raced roughly about 190 kilometers. And our house was 100 kilometers away. So we pretty much did the whole race besides like, it was the last 20 kilometers of the race. And it's not like we were bad. We were still like 40 people finished the race. And it was in the spring, and it was about 40 degrees, and they made us ride home another 3 hours. That was probably my worst day.
Was that like a 180 mile day?
Yeah, it was almost 300K.
That's that's disgusting.
So that was probably my worst experience.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
So what about worst moment, if there's a different one?
Well, worst moment was probably this tour of California. I did it in 2019, and I don't remember the stage. Let's see, it was 8 days or 7 days. It was coming into the last days. We finished up Mount Baldy. And the day before, I was in the break all day, and we were on Highway 1 for 220K with a headwind. So all day in the break, literally it was like kilometer 0, the break went. And then we had a headwind the whole way down Highway 1. So then, of course, naturally, I'm pretty wrecked. And then the next day, we did Mount Baldy. And we started directly up a climb that we would go up, and then you descend down, loop around, go back up this climb to bring you to Mount Baldy. And we'll just say, like 20 minutes into the race, we hit the climb, and I was not feeling great. And I literally was like the first dude dropped. There was 4 of us then.
Oh, no.
And we're like not even an hour in, and we reached the top of the climb, and it's like, oh boy, like we still got to like loop around, do the climb again, and then also do Mount Baldy, which is like one of the toughest climbs in the US.
Oh yeah.
So but by the time I finished that day, I made time cut by 20 seconds, but I finished. But I have never been like more demolished mentally and physically than by the end of that day.
So what is going through your mind when you're 20 minutes into, how long was that stay? I mean, it had to have been a pretty, like duration wise, had to have been a long stage. Like what's going through your mind?
Yeah, like literally, I'm like, well, it's one of those like, do I even finish? Like, should I just pull out type thing? But it was one of those like, no, I'm not gonna pull out. Like, I contemplated. We went through the feed zone, and actually 2 of the dudes that were in my group did decide to just pull the plug, and say like, screw this, like we're kind of done, because it was that day, and then there was one other day, but at the moment I'm like, well, I'm gonna still at least try to finish, and hope to finish this race out. But when I hit Baldy, and Baldy gets really steep, and you hear the broom wagon right behind you, and you know you're so far back. And in these big races, there's always 2 team cars. So I had a team car with me, and he was giving me updates like going up the climb, like, dude, like you gotta hustle because you're floating with time limit. So you might finish, but then you might not even make the time limit, so you still might not even be able to start the next day. I mean, it's definitely a mental battle when you got literally nothing inside you, but you're 30, 40 minutes behind the winners. And these days are always hard because as you're going up the final climb, they don't let the buses or any of that go to the top, so the riders will ride down to wherever the buses are parked. So I'm starting the climb, and the leaders are already down,
just watching
and the
people
bus getting
zoom
changed. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's
so
it's
at that point,
demoralizing.
like, are you? And we don't need to get too deep into this, but are you just riding off feel? Are you trying to look at power, or is it like, were you still riding good power, or mentally you're like, I don't even want to see my power because it's a lot lower than I know I can hold because I'm so wrecked, not only from today but also from yesterday's breakaway. And so kind of how are you managing that? Because I've always wondered this. You watch the big Tour de France and stuff like that, where they cut to the people that are in that gruppetto trying to make the time cut. But like, kind of how are you managing that whole thing?
Like for me on this day in particular, it was just literally trying to do another pedal stroke. Like, you got this one, keep going. Because I definitely underate the day before, and then this day I was so focused on even just trying to like pedal almost, and I'm forgetting to eat, and I'm so kind of delirious. So it was like I'm going, we'll call it quote unquote, just all out, but power was you can't even look at power because you're literally just trying to do each pedal stroke, especially up Baldy because it's so steep. I remember because when I reached the last kilometer, you can kind of get a gauge of time cut because, well, I kind of already had a gauge, but at that point, my director came in the radio and was like, you have X amount of time to do this last kilometer. And there was 5 of us then at this point, and I had a teammate that also like literally exploded and was with me, and he like had a little bit more, and he took off, and I was still like trying to sprint in this last kilometer. Like, I got X amount of time to be there, and I know how long a kilometer takes, and I'm like floating right now of even making time cut. I made it, thankfully.
Oh man.
Yeah, that it sounds like a horrible mental battle in the last kilometer there.
Yeah.
So what about conditions? We don't have to go too deep into it, but worst conditions you've ever experienced?
It was a race. I was 16 in Vermont in May. And midway through the race, it started like full on snowing on us. And it snowed so much then that day. In May, they reopened the ski resort where we were staying. So that was probably the worst day condition-wise.
That sounds awful.
Yeah. But it was a downhill sprint. I got second on junior gears. That's because I was so cold. I remember I was going as hard as I could just to finish, and I somehow got second.
There we go. That's what I like to hear.
So one of the other questions was, what's the biggest challenge that you've had to overcome kind of in your professional career?
Kind of actually the last 2 years have been, they were definitely tough. Went from a premier team, kind of on top of the world there for a bit, being the youngest national champ. Had a lot of things going my way, and then I definitely messed some things up. You can call them messed up, whatever, but things just didn't go my way over the last like 2 years. So that was definitely, it was tough over the last bit, kind of actually refocusing my goals and figuring out kind of where I fit and getting that figured out.
I mean, this has got to be, and you hear about it like anytime a season ends, you have sponsors that collapse. You know, at the pro level, teams that have been around for years disappear, and suddenly you have all these racers trying to find out, okay, what's the new team? Where can I get a contract? What team has openings? Like, this has got to be, you know, us as non-professionals. There's always like, you look at it and you go, oh man, it seems like such a glorious life to be able to ride and race your bike. But on the flip side, it's got to be, go back to, you know, some of the races where the conditions are horrible. It's okay for us to drop out. It's not okay for the pro to drop out, right? Like, but then just the unknown of what's going to happen. The people that play for the Yankees aren't worrying about whether or not the New York Yankees are going to collapse at the end of the year, and they're going to have to find a new team just because the team no longer exists. So, I mean, I can see that being such a stressful thing.
And this year actually is a prime example for that. One of the big World Tour teams didn't find a sponsor, and there's still, I think it's like 12 riders that don't have anything now. It's not lack of not being a good rider. There's some very solid riders that all of a sudden, what am I doing kind of type of thing, especially if it's like I've been doing this for a long time, and then all of a sudden you're just in an unknown, especially for foreign riders that travel to Europe to race. You kind of start creating like this whole little life, and then to have it like essentially ripped out from under you, you get kind of, it's hard and confusing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's easy. I expect or suspect it's easy to kind of get, you know, not calloused, but a negative attitude toward professional racing, and you know, just because that stuff happens all the time. It is so common for like you said, teams to collapse, people not to, you know, to get picked up, people who you think are extremely great riders to get dropped from teams or not picked up by other teams, and like it with no real good explanation.
Yeah.
It's
yeah,
just,
and totally a sport of, well, you hear it all the time. It's like, not what have you done for me before, it's what have you done for me lately, typically, right? Like, if you're not constantly winning, I've always thought like how hard it would be to be a domestique, where you're not bringing a bunch of sponsorship time, you know, you're not on the camera a ton, yet you're fulfilling a very important role for the person who is going to do that later on in a race. So like, you bring a ton of value from a team standpoint, but essentially the sponsors are the ones that are paying the money, right? So it's like, do you have any insight into that whole thing, Johnny? Is that something you've noticed, or you know, if you're to think of yourself, or how would you label yourself, I guess, as the style of rider that you would be? Are you someone who's kind of looking to be more of that overall? Are you more the domestique role? Are you like the one day classics guy? Are you the get in the break and roll it kind of person, pack sprinter? Like what? How do you label yourself?
Good question. I
That's
would
what we're
call
here for.
myself.
The good
Yeah, I would definitely call myself probably more domestique style a lot of times, with the occasional big win.
Are you like the Macarena? I'm gonna come with some number one hits, and then you
pretty
a few
much.
more years, I'll drop another one.
Pretty much.
I mean, is that something that, like, do you enjoy that role? I mean,
Yeah, I do enjoy kind of, because a lot of times what people don't understand is like, say even like the top domestique is kind of even the leader. Everyone kind of quote unquote thinks like the guy winning is leader, but up until the end, sometimes even like the domestique is the one keeping everything in order, along with the ultimate guy going for the results. So I do naturally kind of fall into that role sometimes. Um, so I mean, I definitely do enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense. That the one essentially doing a huge amount of work would be the one, kind of controlling the pace and making sure that everyone else is doing what they're supposed to, and then also protecting the chosen person on that day.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other main questions, which is something that we get asked about a lot, and you are the only one qualified to answer this. Has there been any difference, or what's been the major difference in your training from kind of early years? I mean, we can't even really. There was never really a time when you were like amateur, aside from like when you were really young. But
Aside from Tiger Lane.
yeah. But like, has there been any major changes like when you've gotten into the professional ranks? Like what about your training had changed the most?
I mean, it actually took me even a little bit into U23 was in juniors, and it is something that I kind of try to tell the juniors too, is when you're under 18, a lot of it's just consistency, but then having fun too. I mean, um, you're young, there's no reason to really take it really too serious. And I definitely filled that role pretty big. So as a junior, like I took it serious, but I was definitely going to the cafe and eating cake and not training a whole ton. And I kind of took that a little too far into U23 though too. And it showed like my first 2 years, I thought I could still like do anything and not really ride a whole lot. And now I'm racing
Ride a whole.
against.
What is ride a whole lot? Like
Um,
volume wise.
like I was used to doing like 8 to 12 hours would be like I'll do the winter a lot.
You heard it
Versus
first.
then,
You heard it first. Amateur athletes.
8 to 12 is a
and
lot
Yeah.
to win
well
some
then
junior national titles.
and then yeah, I entered U23 pro ranks and then was doing big races, and I'm racing against World Tour riders that have been pros for like 10 years, and I'm over here trying to do like 12 hours. It didn't work out so good. So
When
yeah,
did you actually realize that? Was there like a, oh crap, like I
yeah.
am not where my training is not where it needs to be? Was there like one instance where you showed up to a
Mhm.
race or maybe like a team camp or something like that where you're like, oh geez, I gotta take this up and I gotta dial in every aspect of performance in order to
Well,
be on, on the level I know I need to be at?
entering my third year as a U23, so the year that I won nationals is when I really like figured out like, okay, I got to definitely change some things and start upping volume and all of that. And it showed through 2018 then. I definitely made a very big progression compared to the first 2 years as a U23. Yeah, 2018, besides I won nationals that year, but I also had some other good results. And it kind of was because of what happened through the winter time. Definitely figured out that volume is key for sure.
And so, what are you like? What are you kind of aiming for these days?
Well, now things are switching a little, so I've brought volume down a tiny bit compared, but anywhere between that 18 to 25 range.
Gotcha.
Which I guess segues a little bit. There's still a few more questions from the social here, but that kind of segues a little bit into, what are the big goals this year? Tell us a little bit more about your team, what that team's focusing on, and just kind of give us that input, the inside scoop on what is going on this year for you.
Yeah, I'm definitely really excited for this year. Mason, it's going to be a brand new team called Miami Blazers. So we're essentially we are a Miami team. And the whole goal is inclusion. Cycling, we're definitely, cycling is predominantly white, as a lot of us know. And as we've seen with the Legion of Los Angeles team out of LA, they've really opened the arms to inclusion, and it's kind of changing the sport in America. And we're in Miami, and we'll definitely be more Hispanic based. So that's like the ultimate goal for the team right there, is trying to, we'll call it, open our arms to other ethnicities and show that cycling is an inclusive sport. So that's the ultimate goal for the team. For myself, I think, or the ultimate goal is nationals again this year for me. That's going to be like my quote unquote biggest goal.
Yep.
So that's not necessarily maybe win again, but in 21, I kind of, with all the adversity that I had through the year, I still had a pretty good result. Messed some things up in the race, but I still showed that I can be very competitive at nationals. So to be competitive at that race, and we're doing mainly crits, which is going to be different for me than I'm used to. So honestly, a lot of it for me for this year in particular, I know I can do well in US road races and things like that, but it's going to be one of my biggest goals is just learning a new style of races and new races. So that's kind of my ultimate goal for the year, with doing this new scene of crits and everything, is figuring out my role in that.
Which that's something we've talked about on some of the other podcasts, and Dale and I have discussed it a lot. Not on podcasts, just in casual conversation. Is we both feel that the U.S. scene is going more towards crit racing. Last year, USA Crits had televised events. There was a series that was together. That all got kind of jacked up. It was one of the most exciting things for me was the USA Crit series and kind of how that was going. We won't dive into the fact that there's been quite a few races that have pulled themselves out of the USA Crits due to the guy who was in charge of that and his past. But tell us what big races is your team targeting, and what do you view as the U.S. cycling scene right now? Is it going to stay more crit focused? Is it going to go more, where we're going to have some of these Tour Californias, Colorado, Utah popping back up? Like, how do you view the whole thing going based on your insight here?
Yeah, if things keep going in the trend they're going, I think crits are kind of our future in America. We've seen with like Justin Williams and Corey Williams with like Into the Lion's Den crit. And I know their ultimate goal is to start getting more of those too.
Gotcha.
And then even races like Athens Twilight, Tulsa Tough, they're big races. And I think people have kind of realized it's cheaper to put on. For one, you're closing a lot smaller of an area. It's definitely a lot more accessible. You can put them in places of cities and bring in a lot of people. And also kind of going back, it is a lot more inclusive. You can bring the family, and it can definitely bring in a lot more money to cities than a road race in the middle of nowhere.
Hey, I know there's nothing my wife loves more than going to podunk nowhere and standing around in a feed zone for 3 hours to see me ride by one time and hand me bottles that I usually miss.
That is the ultimate joy right there.
Yeah. That's how you know you got to keep her.
Yeah.
She's willing to stand in a feed zone for 3 or 4 hours and throw bottles at you. You better put a ring on it.
Yeah.
So are those the big races you're seeing, or are there others that have popped? So for those not familiar with the Lions Den race, that was one that got put on late season. It was in Sacramento, I believe. Big money, $100,000 payout, $50,000 equal to the men's and the women's. You were at that, right, Johnny? But are there more of those that you know of? Do you view, Athens Twilight's been around forever? Is that like a big target? Tulsa Tough, obviously a massive crit race as well that's been around for a super long time. Like, what are the big ones that you guys are seeing that are definites on your calendar? And are there more that are popping up that maybe we don't know about yet? Give us the intel here.
I think Tulsa will probably be one of the biggest goals for the team. And then, it's kind of, some of the races are still kind of figuring out with like the whole USA Crits ordeal and everything. USA Cycling announced like a 6 series race, series 2 that like Tulsa will be a part of. And a lot of those races that are part of USA Crits are kind of falling under this USA Cycling series that they're going to do now. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, hopefully for 22, none of the big races kind of got affected by that USA Crits thing. It sounds like almost all of them will just be either independent or part of this USA Cycling series. And then, I mean, if Justin's goal of creating more Lions Dens happen, that's going to be also huge for US Cycling. And it sounds like, and I'm hopeful that his trend does start taking off. Because Lions Den was it was awesome. It was a huge experience, and I had tons of fun.
Yeah, it's kind of like what they're trying to do with the Professional Triathletes Organization. They're trying to put together these races that have big prize purses so that, all you guys who are trying to make a living from professional cycling in America actually have some opportunities to make a decent amount of money in one shot, or like a 6-race series where if you guys do well in all 6, you can essentially make your living, make your salary for the year. And with a lot of those opportunities disappearing, the big road races or stage races and stuff that have kind of disappeared over the years, like there's just far fewer opportunities to make a living as a Continental pro. So, I mean, I think it's great what they're doing, and hopefully the trend keeps up and some big sponsors step up and pony up for some big prize purses. Because crit racing is just like, it is so spectator friendly, and it's action packed, like you said, easier to put on, less roads to close, and then the economic impact for the city is so much greater because you're spending time in like one little area, and most people will like come into the city, stay in the city, eat in the city. Like it's just a much bigger impact.
I mean, Tulsa Tough is a prime example of that. Look how many people are at each night, how many people are traveling in from all over the country. So you're having people driving in, flying in, and not only is like the pro race packed, but every category through the whole day is sold out. And that's a lot of people in Tulsa coming in, spending money in their city, and then all the fans that are and spectators coming out every day watching. That it brings in a lot more than, as we literally said, going to 2 hours south of Tulsa, some random place starting in a church parking lot.
Yeah, because usually you're trying to find the spot that has the least amount of residences,
Traffic.
people, businesses. Like most road races in America, you're trying to find the least populated area because then it's the least impact on the area, less risk, less cars, less everything, which is totally the opposite of what makes things exciting from a spectator standpoint.
I do have to give Tulsa a shout out because they have kind of figured out that these bigger events really do bring in a lot of money to the city because they just recently added a full Ironman in Tulsa in May. So I mean, they wouldn't put all that together if they didn't realize how much it actually impacts the city, on an economic level.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, have you done Tulsa Step before?
I actually haven't ever done it because it's always in a time that I'm still normally in Europe, right before I come back for nationals. So that's in the past, since even for a really long time, even as a junior, I've only done normally like between, we'll call it 2 to 8 races a year in America. And that's kind of like showing up to the local Tiger Lane or anything. I haven't been able to do many. So I'm like really excited to be at these races this year. That was one of the things somebody asked me the other day. Is it's exciting to know like there is the opportunity now for Americans to race in America, make money for a living, because literally for years now, if you're not racing in Europe, it's like, are you even pro? Like if you're in the US, it was like, well, that guy just, who cares? But now we're seeing that trend of, oh sweet, like young riders can stay in America now and make a living and race in America, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's what we need. I mean, that's where we need to take it so that we can, eventually have some really good riders on the highest level, the Grand Tour level, and to represent the U.S. at Worlds and all that stuff.
This just kind of popped into my head here. What is your input on the gravel scene? So you've got quite a few, pros that are retiring or pros that, have, instead of being on this end of each year, I don't know if my contract's going to get renewed. And they've kind of gone almost into business for themselves, really, and are getting picked up and becoming sponsored and just focusing primarily on the gravel scene, which seems to be growing year after year. And you've got more big name people, retired European pros that are coming. Last year you had some of the quick step guys that came over and did the shorter the Belgian Waffle Kansas ride. Like what is your viewpoint on that whole thing, the gravel scene? Is that something you're wanting to dip your toes in at all? Are you 100% road crit? Is that your area of focus, or where are you at there?
Well, literally before we kind of changed over, I was going to say, on the contrary, about being in the middle of nowhere is gravel, because those are normally in the middle of nowhere, and they are bringing in a lot of money to these really small cities, which is, it's such a mass crowd coming that these small cities are stoked to have all this money come in. So that was kind of on the contrary to us saying that road races don't bring anything into those places. Gravel, though, I mean, now that the US doesn't have many road races and stuff, I do like road racing is kind of what I'm better at versus just already knowing like crits. I'm definitely going to be better at road races. So I would like to maybe go to a few gravel events, because they still fall into that quote unquote road racing ish. They're still definitely longer and it's different, but yeah, I would enjoy doing some. Would I enjoy doing like Unbound? Probably not. I definitely do not want
10 plus hours.
Yeah, that doesn't sound that fun to me, to be honest.
That'll take you back to your day where you guys didn't finish that final circuit and had to ride home.
Yeah, literally though.
100K.
But going to like pros, ex World Tour riders now doing gravel, kind of the way sponsorship and the way companies are spending their money is changing a bit. It is definitely a lot better for a company to sponsor X rider and they're getting so much exposure out of it versus giving 10 times as much money to a team and maybe not even getting half the amount of exposure. So that's kind of the way gravel now has grown so much, and these riders are able to make a living out of it. And not even World Tour pros. There's plenty of people that quote unquote we'll call we had no idea about, that have really built built something out of it and really not taken advantage, but have figured out how to really grow, and now they ride whatever you want to call them, full-time riders, and they might not even be quote unquote racing these races, but they're still sponsored athletes, and then they're creating content and showing the brands that are sponsoring them. So sponsorship is kind of changed, especially in the US, is changing the way it's viewed and the way companies are spending their money now.
Yeah, I think Red Bull figured that out years ago.
Oh, for sure.
They have you don't see them sponsoring any major teams, but there are tons and tons of individual high-level athletes out there rocking those Red Bull helmets, and they do their crazy events and stuff like that. But they kind of figured out a long time ago that the individuals who have a really good social media presence or something like that are getting them far better exposure for their dollar.
The ROI is much better there. Yeah.
I mean, how many like individuals can you sponsor, and those people are probably making a year's salary on their Red Bull sponsorship, and that money, how many people would it take, compared to like what the average sponsorship is for like a Grand Tour team? Like, they can
20 million for the Grand Tour, and
they got, if they took that 20 million, they got plenty of people out there, that will give them more exposure. So I think companies like that are figuring it out.
And Justin and Corey Williams are a prime example of that, of how well they've done on social media, and that's why so many companies are willing to give them personally and Legion so much money, because you even see it on World Tour teams that have millions of dollars of a budget, but honestly their social media kind of sucks compared. And then
totally
you have
true.
we'll call it at first like these kind of quote unquote random dudes out of LA that were getting 3-10 times as many views and getting all this money, but it's because they're actually giving the sponsors exposure and doing what the sponsorship money is there for, and they're kind of the kings of it now, and showing what the standard is.
All right, I've got one more question for you, Jonny. Which crit shall we expect to see you dominating the Williams brothers in the final sprint train?
Ooh, we'll call it the last day of Tulsa, Crybaby Hill. I feel like we have very, very good sprinters, but Justin and Corey are so quick that it is hard, no matter what you do, to, even if you have a better lead out, they're just so fast. But Crybaby is kind of a bit different. We got a little hill before the last corner. We'll call it that one.
I like it.
Awesome. Well, hey, we got to kind of wrap things up, but we appreciate you sitting down with us, and man, we're super excited about having you on board and kind of seeing what we can all do together here. But we appreciate everyone hanging out, listening, watching. And we will catch you guys next time. Adios.
Peace.
Later.